So we're just going to get ready for the show. And
Okay, cool. Just gonna turn everything here to airplane. Let's see, I think that'll knock you off. Okay, that should work.
oh, perfect. Yeah, it's been a while since we talked. I can't believe about 3 months ago we started.
Couple of months, yeah. I think that's right. We've had a baby in the meantime, so my time orientation is far off.
Oh wow, congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, very much so. Right in the spirit for the holidays, so that should make things
Yeah.
even more exciting.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly. Magnus, where do you live?
I live in Pennsylvania,
Okay.
Northeast Pennsylvania. So it's not snowing out at the moment, but it is quite cold. We're back in the 20s, and you're still down in Georgia, correct?
I'm in Georgia, man, and I think the entire country is about to get slammed with some bad cold weather.
Yeah, I seen that. It's supposed to hit us Thursday and a Friday, possibly even Saturday. They're calling anywhere from 4 to 12 inches of snow. So
Yeah, they said we could possibly get a half inch of snow, and we haven't seen snow in 7 years, probably. It's a really rare thing
yeah,
where we live. Yeah.
that'll shut down the state, won't it? Because you're not equipped
Uh,
for that.
in Atlanta for sure, and I live almost on the Florida line, and so it'll hit, but it won't accumulate. It won't freeze overnight, so it's a novelty for us. But in Atlanta, the Atlanta airport bought its first snowplow like 3 years ago.
Really?
Yeah,
They never
it never needed it.
that'll put a damper on a lot of flights leaving, because that's a giant hub for United and Americans out of
Everybody.
actually, yeah, you're right. Everybody.
Delta, yeah, Delta's headquartered there.
Yeah, that's a giant airport. I almost got lost down there. Almost.
Yeah, it's a good big airport. Like I hate LAX, I hate Dulles, I hate Chicago, JFK, all the big airports I hate. But Atlanta is very user friendly. It's big, but it's user friendly.
Right. So is
You know,
Charlotte. I agree.
Charlotte's a good airport too. You're right. Yeah,
Absolutely. Flying in Atlanta, it's very well signed. I will notice that, and there's quite of abundance of variety down there.
yeah,
As for shops and food as much.
yeah. That's right. They've done a good job there. Denver is a good big airport, but it is nowhere close to Denver.
No, I agree. I got stuck in Denver for like 12
Like
hours.
an hour. It's like an hour from Denver.
But it's still considered. I don't understand how that's still considered Denver when you're a mile outside the city limits.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but I will definitely agree with you with LAX. I would rather fly out of John Wayne, out of Irvine.
Completely agree. Completely. My assistant knows not to put me at LAX and not to put me at Dulles. I'll handle O'Hare if I have to. But those two, I don't like DFW, but you can still make a connection.
Mm-hmm.
I miss connections in LAX all the time.
Oh yeah.
And not because I don't know what I'm doing, it's because you just can't get there,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, the trams and all, even the walking distances between everything. It's just spaced out way too far.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, completely.
Yeah, even because of I've been to MCO Orlando quite a few times, and I loved Orlando. It's a great airport.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of Detroit or O'Hare. Either one of them, there's like nothing there.
I haven't been through Detroit much because when Northwestern shut down, that was their hub, and so I haven't been through there as much in recent years.
Okay, well, I do my best to fly through United. I'm not an American Airlines fan. I use American Airlines for the ultimate last hope.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm the same way. Magnus, tell me about your audience. I don't remember that we discussed that a lot, just so I can tailor, any of the comments so that it makes it valuable for them.
Okay. The audience is a variety of people. I have everybody from like 18 years old and up, age-wise, and there's more or less on the, I don't want to say beginners, but they're enthusiastic about investing, but they just don't know how to get started and
Okay.
breaking things down. And even the seasoned investors that do invest, I try to give them something as well to actually make them think. It's like, oh, well, this is overlooked. It's something they've done. Like you're in insurance and whatnot, you constantly know what to do and how to do things. I like to try to bring a little bit different aspect and perspective to things, and just a good conversation about it. Maybe there's something that
Okay.
that you haven't done in so long, and you might want to try. Someone else might actually pick up on that and try to think, oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So we probably want to talk a lot about my private market investments. So in running the family office, I had to put together a mechanism where we could do deals and investments and things like that that weren't super obvious and easy
Mhm.
to find, because we need a very high consistency in return
Right.
that the stock market quite simply doesn't deliver.
Mhm.
So we have an entire deal structure where we look for private market deals. I just had lunch with three other investors in that same um, family office structure, and we were all sitting there and basically just batting deals around. Hey, have you guys seen this one? What about this one? What do you think about this? That
Okay.
sort of thing. So a lot of deals are put together in that way. I don't know if that's interesting to people or not, but that's something we could potentially discuss.
Absolutely, we can do that. More or less, how you structure your business after family, after family, after family members, work it down, and the benefits and some of the pros and cons of doing it that way instead of just going into just a normal traditional investing firm.
Yep.
I definitely want to get into that, and that's one of the key things that I when we talked is like, wow, I didn't realize, you know, having your business is basically your child that you want to see grow up and whatnot, and you've been part of that. But a lot of people just treat it as another thing to do, another job to go to, instead of actually putting it towards where it needs to go
Yeah.
and focusing on things.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
Oh,
Okay. Good. That helps me. That gives me some orientation.
excellent. Yeah, it's not. I can't guarantee that we'll get as much done as we can, because I like to have the conversation as we talked before about it.
Sure.
I do have your information up here a little bit everywhere, but we'll go where the conversation takes us. Whatever we discuss is going to give value at some point to somebody.
Okay. Great.
Hey there, Magnus. This is Andrew from Voice America filling in for Josh today. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Andrew. How are you, sir?
Doing well. Can't complain. Let's go ahead and start off with some sound checks. Magnus, we'll start with you first.
Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Perfect. Awesome. Good. Sounding great. And then, hi, Trey. How you doing today?
Hello. How are you?
Doing well. Go ahead and count backwards from the number 5 for me, please.
Yeah. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Perfect. Great. Awesome. I sent you a test chat as well. I'll send your cues through there just like Josh does. Then, Magnus, how many breaks do you normally do?
We usually do one at the bottom of the hour.
Okay. Perfect. You got it.
Awesome.
All right. We've got about 1 minute till showtime.
Oh wow, that always goes by fast, but it's always the last 10 seconds that takes forever.
All right. Let's see here. All right, gentlemen, we got about 30 seconds to hear the sound. Have a great show.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Welcome to Making More Money for You with Magnus Carter. Whether you feel that you don't have enough money to start investing or are under the preconceived notion that investing is only for the wealthy, Magnus and his expert guests are here to help you. Now, here is your host, Magnus Carter.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the show. It's been a week already. I can't believe it. The time is just flying by as we get to the end of the year. I want to definitely take a special a moment to thank my guest last week about personal branding, Jesse Clark of the Beautiful Badass Life. It was a pleasure having her on, and actually what it means to actually do branding, how she actually came across as a personal brand, and how she actually lives her life to incorporate the branding into all facets. Which brings me back to this show today. This was another show that was booked a couple months ago already, and I met Trey through a previous guest. I met him through Tommy Breedlove, and we got connected. And Trey has a very unique way of running a business, his business. And before we get into that, Trey, welcome to the show.
Magnus, good to see you. Thanks so much for having me, man.
Absolutely. I like I was saying before, I can't believe it's been a couple months already. It just feels like maybe a week ago we just talked.
At the end of the year always flies. You got so much stuff going on, and I'm with you. It's like I woke up and here we are today. So I'm glad to be with you, though.
Oh, thank you very much, and it's much appreciated to take the time out as we are busy trying to close out the year. And on top of that, we always have these holidays that kind of interrupt a little bit of the end of the year sequence that we get ready for the next year. So Trey, can you let's before we get into the show, can we have a little bit more information about you, where you've been, what you've been doing, and where do you see yourself actually doing maybe even next year?
Yeah, sure. So Trey Taylor and I run a family office, a single family office for my family to manage four generations of wealth called Threadneedle. And that business has come about relatively recently as we had some liquidity events that came about starting in about 2019 and early 2020. And so we had a piece of beachfront property in Jacksonville, Florida, that we had held for about 40 years that got sold sort of as a surprise to us. We got a very strong offer on that, and so we sold that. We also were early investors in Airbnb, which went public in December of 19. I think it might have been January of 20. And so that provided some liquidity. And then we actually lost a family member around that same time that had a lot of life insurance and a lot of liquidity in their own estate. And so what we decided to do as a family was to contribute all of those sort of assets into one working structure. The idea being there that we could be optimal in the way that we made financial decisions. We could also be sort of legacy stewards. So we didn't create all of the wealth that sort of came into our hands in that couple of month period, but we wanted to be good stewards for the next 3 or 4 generations that were coming online. And so each of the generations decided to contribute those assets into a common management structure that we call Threadneedle. So it's a
Okay.
family office. Yep.
Wow, that's a lot, and a lot of great success for you. Congratulations on that in such a short amount of time. So when we talk about family businesses, we're not talking about The Godfather. We're not talking about any any mafia type of thing going on here.
Depends on who you ask, I think. But yeah, in our situation, we're definitely not talking about that.
Oh, well, that's definitely good to know. We clarify that, because when we hear family, we don't associate family with business. Everybody keeps them separated. So how is it that you came to the conclusion or the notion of actually putting both of them together?
Well, I was born into the family business. And so we always, my grandfather started our business and we always worked inside that business. So all 3 of his sons worked inside the business. My brother actually worked inside the business, which was an insurance and financial planning business for very many years, a couple of generations. I went a different route, prompted, a lot by the experience of the family. And I went a different route and became much more of a venture capitalist. I have a law degree. We were trying to sort of professionalize the operations of the family, but we always think in terms of what can this generation do for the next generation. And, we just sort of have that common commitment to one another. It doesn't mean that we don't go our different ways. So we have some members of the family that don't work in the family business. They don't participate in the family office. but they still get invited to Christmas and Thanksgiving, So
Okay.
it's not that, it's not like it's an exclusive type thing. We just have some that participate and some that don't.
Okay. And when you did you realize that you were going to be coming back into the family business or never leave the business when you decided to go to schooling?
No, yeah. So my dad actually encouraged me to go and sort of stake my own claim.
Okay.
He said, don't kind of come into the business and do what we do for a living. You've got different talents, and you've got opportunities that can take you in different places. But unfortunately, after I had completed law school and had done my venture capital work and actually was working in house at really large Fortune 100 companies, doing corporate development, M&A, and investments and acquisitions and those kinds of things. My dad actually passed away very suddenly from what we now know was COVID.
Okay.
Back then, it was called SARS-2, and it was super unexpected. He was only 52 years old. And we
Oh,
didn't
wow.
at that point have a really well articulated succession plan. And so it sort of fell to me as the only person that had run businesses and worked in the C-suite of businesses to sort of come home and take over things and make sure that everybody was protected in the family. And so that was 18 years ago now, and I haven't looked back since then. And we've grown that business that I joined,
Mhm.
invested in lots of other businesses, over 100 other businesses, and we do all kinds of different deals and different kind of investment structures. So it's been a good journey.
Okay. It sounds like a very good journey and definitely not your typical journey for actually growing a business, especially when you're dealing with family. Now, when someone actually thinks about going into business with their family, were there ground rules that were already in place and change as the the company evolved?
Yeah, I'm sure there were prior to sort of my arrival, but all the time it has been one member of the family that has owned the core business, and so that remains the case even today. My grandfather owned the business, but he
Mhm.
had he had employment, if you will,
Okay.
for his three kids, right? And then my father sort of was selected as the person to inherit and to purchase the other people out of the business when he took it over. When he passed away, my brother and I inherited it together. And then when my brother passed away in 19, I inherited his portion of the business as well. So it has sort of always been that it belongs to one person. I
Mhm.
think it works because we steward that business to benefit other people. Um, and everyone sort of, I guess you sort of have a claim that, hey, I'm ready and willing to work. Can I
Mhm.
show up for a job? And we will usually find a role for somebody. It isn't the case that you can show up and say, I'm ready for a check, but I don't want to work. That doesn't work for us. That's not part of
Okay.
our ethos. But yeah, we try to sort of cast a wide net, and that doesn't only apply to members of my family, but people that work in those businesses that we own now often bring their own family members into the businesses as well. Yeah.
So, okay. Now that can definitely be a segue into the next thing is the environment. Now are all these businesses ran in different buildings, or is it all mainly one building that runs everything of all the businesses and then flows down?
Yeah. So I guess you could think of it in terms of wherever my brain is the headquarters
Okay.
of the business, if you will. So we do some customer service out of our sort of home office in our hometown. And, that's where we keep the QuickBooks account and the
Mhm.
folders and, the things necessary from a documentation standpoint to run the business. But the strategy and the execution, sort of exist wherever the person doing the work is. Yeah.
Okay. Now, for someone to actually start a family business like yours, how difficult would that be to actually not so much mimic but put in place what you're doing right now?
I don't know that it's that difficult at all. I think 97% of businesses are classified in the US as small business, which means
Mhm.
under 100 employees.
O-
And that's
Okay.
not my definition of a small business at all. And I think the number is a lot higher than that. But But, and most of those small businesses are some form of family business, right? So maybe
Okay.
it's a spouse and a spouse working, maybe it's a father son, mother son, something like that kind of business. But most businesses, I think, in this country are family businesses from that standpoint. To transition from family business to family office is a different kind of transition. And the family
Okay.
office concept was pioneered early on by the Rockefellers, who said, "Hey, we have a lot of capital, and we want to still maintain our central holdings in the oil business and the refinery business, but we have excess capital. Where can we put it to work where it's centrally managed? Our interests are centrally managed." And so that was the formation of the family office concept. Their family office is still in existence now, 5 or 6 generations, if not more, later. And a lot of us use that as sort of the template by which we build the office. And so sometimes you have investment advisors, fund managers. As your holdings grow, you put people alongside those things. Some of these offices are quite big. I have a friend that runs a $450 million family office, and he has a concierge service inside the office where if somebody wants to borrow the jet or go to the beach house or something of that nature, then you don't call a travel agent, you call a lady that works for the family office, and she schedules it and handles it for you. That's not something that we do, but some of the larger families, if you have 100 members of the family, how do you share those assets equitably? That's something that they do as well. So, we're not there yet, but we're definitely, doing the work and laying the groundwork so that we have those kinds of nice to have problems in the future.
Yeah, they definitely sound like a good expansion and something that's nice to have. Now, when you're looking at opportunities like this and you're looking to expand out, instead of actually partnering with a company, an outside source of the family office, now do you, instead of doing that, do you weigh the options of actually starting up your own entity up like that? Uh,
Yeah, it's a good question. So when we sort of had the idea originally, we said, this is not something that we've ever done, and so we're not going to be experts at it. Why don't we bring in the experts?
okay.
And we interviewed about 11 with what is called multifamily offices, where you plug your assets into a common management structure. And we were pretty thoroughly unimpressed by what was on offer for the prices that were coming in. Very much of it was on an asset allocation model, which I thought was very out of step with the goals that we were trying to achieve. Meaning that they would say things like, "Oh, well, for this size office, you need to put 80% in the public stock market, and
Oh my.
20% can be divided into blah blah blah." And I just thought that was not growth oriented nearly as much as it was sort of maintenance oriented, and that's not who
Yeah.
we are as a family. We got very close with 1 or 2 offices, but then eventually just decided that the complexity of what we were trying to put together was not that great. It didn't make sense, to pay multiple 6 figures a
Mhm.
year to be in those structures yet. And so we didn't go that way. I stepped out of my management role in the operating business, joined the family office as sort of the sole employee at this stage, and have done that now for 3 years. Just recently, we hired a back end provider to manage some of the public investments and to do
Okay.
some of the more complicated tax planning and structural planning issues.
Okay. Wow,
Yeah.
that definitely a lot to weigh in there, especially when you're trying to figure, as you were trying to do with the family office, is make it generational, because you do have to plan for almost every contingency out there, and I'm sure you didn't plan on for the lovely thing we had it back in 2020.
We did not. And so that was quite scary, but also quite lucky because we had pulled all of our assets out of the public markets
Oh, okay.
just by almost by accident in getting together and trying to restructure everything. So we had very, very little exposure to the public markets as they fell over the past several years. We've waded back in, but not in any sort of major way. And largely that's because I'm in a couple of study groups with people that run very big family offices. And, I'm not smart. I just follow what smart people do, and so I'm watching how they put their money to work. And that's the kind of thing that we're trying to imitate where we can. Yeah.
And yes, you're actually using money as a tool to make more money for yourselves. Am I correct on that?
Exactly right. That's the only thing that money really is supposed to do, isn't it?
Mhm.
I heard someone say once that if my dollar is only doing one thing, I've got too lazy a dollar and it needs to be disciplined. And so, as you learn that, that's really the first steps on wealth. Because earlier in my life, I wanted to earn a paycheck so that I could pay bills. And when you realize that earning a paycheck to pay bills is a dead end street, like you will
Mhm.
do that for your entire life, and then after you're gone, the IRS will present your family with a bill. I mean, that's a dismaying situation. And so I very much wanted to build something where the wealth would build more wealth. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Yes. That's you know, uh, I did read most of your book. I'm halfway through your book about that, and it does talk about that, especially in the three things that a good CEO does. And one of them that you did talk about is find out this what the smartest person is doing, and then tailor it to what you need it to do.
Yeah.
It's not just black and white. Because your circumstances aren't what their circumstances were, and you actually adapted it and are growing from it.
Yeah, that's exactly what my model is. I'm a huge Charlie Munger fan. Charlie Munger is Warren Buffett's partner,
Mhm.
and Munger is this sort of wealth, this oracle of mental models, of these frameworks or these templates. And he might read what happened in the Greek city states in 600 BC and find a parallel in what Gillette razors business is doing tomorrow. And it's simply that learning from what others have learned means I don't have to reconstruct the model every single time I come across a challenge. And same thing is that's why I get into study groups and masterminds as intensely as I do, is because I want to see how other people respond to challenges before those challenges are mine.
Oh, absolutely. And with a wide array of people that you are interacting with, your experience grows. And that's one of the things that this show is all about, is experiencing new things, doing the overlooked things, the dumb things that people bypass and leave money on the table for. And go after it and see what it does. Sometimes it doesn't pan out, and that's okay too, because now you understand why. As long as you understand why it didn't pan out, but take that
Sure.
knowledge and put it somewhere else, it'll it's basically the thing where the trial and error comes in. But you're already using successful things that work, and we're just tailoring them.
That's exactly right. And ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be rich. And in order to be rich, I just watched what rich people did and tried my own version of it. Now, maybe I
Yeah.
couldn't do it at the degree that they were doing it because my resources were smaller. But I always had sort of a hustle to do those things. I was the kid on the school bus that would go I begged my parents to take me to Costco or Sam's over the weekend. I'd buy candy and I'd take it and I'd sell it for a profit.
Yep.
I would buy Chick-fil-A sandwiches and sort of bring them in for lunch and sell them for $3 when I got them for $1. I was always sort of involved in a hustle. I always had money in my pocket. I was always able to do the things that I wanted to do. My family was generous, but it was always a matching principle for us.
Okay.
So when I bought my first car, my father didn't like stroke a check and say, "Here's your car." He said, "Whatever you bring me on your 16th birthday, I will match, and you can get the car that you like." And so, Magnus, my first car was a BMW
Very
because
nice.
I hustled my butt off for years to have enough money to buy a used BMW. When
Okay.
I came to my dad, he was very unhappy with that because it was a bigger check than he thought he was going to have to write. Um, but I drove the wheels off that car, and we sold that car for what I paid for it, my portion of what I paid for it,
Wow.
5 years later. So that is just a different sort of dynamic in
Mhm.
in learning how to hustle and get my deals done and do what I saw rich people doing.
Now, you brought up a good point there. Even though it's a very wide and ambiguous term, rich, what does rich mean to you?
So I think that definition has definitely evolved over
Mhm.
time for me. I don't think I could have told you when I was in the sixth grade why
Mhm.
I wanted to be rich, except to have things. I
Okay.
wanted to have a helicopter or a Lamborghini. I remember being in the eighth grade thinking I could buy a house or a Lamborghini. Well, gosh, a Lamborghini's the way to go. That was the thing that I would,
Right.
aspire to grow up to own, of course, not thinking of where I would park it or where I would sleep. So my definition has changed over time. Now I have three children, and the definition of being wealthy to me now is having enough health, enough mental presence, and enough opportunity to share their interests when it is fresh for them. And so, if I wake up one morning and I don't have to go punch a clock because my kid has
Mhm.
a softball game, or it's my turn to take them to breakfast before we go to school, or whatever that looks like, then that's the kind of rich that I want to be. And it isn't tied to a number. And I used to think it was. I used to think it was you have to have $1 million to be rich, or 10 million or
Mhm.
something. And it isn't. I don't want to be rich as much as I want to be wealthy now. And I want to have wealthy just means I want to have more than I need. And that's where I want to be right now.
Okay. And now, do you see, talking to you now and then possibly talking to you like 10 years before, would you have thought that the evolution of your path now would ever be what you're at?
10 years ago, yes. 20 years ago, no.
Okay.
So 20 years ago, I was going to be a titan of industry and, live in a big metropolis and that sort of thing. And because the way, the things I was describing to you didn't
Mhm.
play out the way I thought they would,
Right.
I live in a very small town. We live a lot more conservatively than I used to think was ever going to be possible. I'll tell you, one of the ways that I have more than I need, which is my definition of wealth, is I spend less than I ever thought I would. And I'm smart about the administration of debt and the purchase of things that become liabilities and
Mhm.
those kinds of things. So yeah, I think 20 years ago I would have given you a different answer. 10 years ago I was on the path. I had
Okay.
started to see the path to start building it out. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Wow. Okay. And as with my path and your path, I'm working on a path because there's many different avenues as and definitions of success. My success right now is getting the information out to the people. I'm seeing that, I'm
Mhm.
doing that. Uh, as to the wealth part of it, the wealth is growing. My quality of life is getting better. The you
Yep.
know the money will come after putting the hard work in. I'm right because I'm with you where you were 20 years ago doing the hard work, and I'm right there now, and I'm seeing the benefits and starting the payoffs for it. So,
Yep. And it's good because you can see a template, right? You can
right.
see that there's a path forward, that you do this first and then this next and that sort of thing. I mentioned to you before the show started that I just had lunch and coffee
Right.
with three other guys in the same boat that I'm in, with same stage of life, roughly the same age, probably the same assets under management
Mhm.
for our families. We don't talk about numbers, but that's probably the case. And we all have this affinity for mental models and looking for businesses that are producing excess cash flow and all of
Okay.
those things. One of the guys made a comment that every wealthy person he knows has one thing in common and only one thing. And I was fascinated to hear this. I mean, I
Yeah.
put my fork down, I leaned in. Whole life insurance. And he polled the
Ah,
group, do you own whole life?
mhm,
And everybody at the table owned as much whole life insurance as we could possibly afford. I
mhm.
thought that was superbly interesting. So it's little things, little clues like that I watch for to say, if he had said something different that I didn't own, I would immediately be investigating that, wouldn't I? Yeah. So I find little clues like that to be really fascinating.
Well, absolutely. Since you brought up whole life, is my grandfather was teaching me that way back when growing up about the differences and whatnot. I'm like, oh, all right. it's there. I'll leave it there. It's there, and it's paid off. And he took care of that with his generation, so that the next generation after me could actually profit, not have to worry about it. Worry
Exactly.
about
In
what's
so
coming next.
many different ways.
Exactly.
I know we're probably coming up on a break here pretty
Oh,
soon,
yes.
but I had a deal that hit last year that, because I had a really well-funded whole life policy that I had funded over the years, I was able to write a check to buy a shopping center out of bankruptcy and foreclosure that I flipped and tripled that money in less than 12 months. But I had to have that in order to do that. And my ability to do that started 15 years ago when I started making my premium payments. So
Gotcha.
that's it's a little interesting spin on it.
Oh, absolutely. And you are right. We are actually getting ready to take a break. The first half of the show is already, over, and it feels
Man,
like we're just getting started. We're just warming up to this whole topic, especially the family business, how you're exploring it, how uh, people can start doing these items and start tailoring them to what their specifications. But for the moment, Trey, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to get more in depth with this and cover some more topics. So everybody,
cool.
thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Magnus Carter. My guest, Trey Taylor. We're talking about family businesses, what it's like to own one, what some of the major differences, and how to go about being uh, profitable and successful with it. We're going to take this break, and we're going to be right back.
All clear. Great segment, gentlemen.
Thank you, Andrew. That flew by, Trey. I don't know how.
That was fast, man. Yeah. That's good.
So anything we want to get into in the second half of this? I know I want to get into your book a little bit, especially
If you want
towards
to
the
talk
end.
about the book, if that applies to some people, then yeah, I always love to talk about that. I always end up selling, 12 to 15 copies. It's kind of funny to watch the next day sale after I do a podcast or something. So it's kind of funny.
Yeah, we'll definitely hit that up towards like the middle of the half. We'll talk about the CEOs, how actually we are all CEOs of our own business if we are business
Mhm.
owners, and the three things that we won't give them exactly everything in the book, but a good lead towards it.
Yeah, we'll whet their appetite.
Absolutely. Are you ready for the holidays now?
We are. So I'm that guy who by the end of October, all my Christmas shopping is done. My wife is not that person, but I am. She literally got our Christmas cards in the mail today. So she and I operate on vastly different time frames. Now, to her defense, she did have a kid 2 months ago, so I'll give her a pass this year.
Just for this year. Next year,
that's
completely
right.
off.
I'll still be mad next year. Yeah.
10 seconds.
Okay.
You're listening to Making More Money for You with Magnus Carter. If you have any questions for Magnus or his guests, join us on the show at 866-472-5789. That's 866-472-5789. Now back to the show. Here is Magnus Carter.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Or if you're just tuning in, welcome to the show. This show, this month of shows is basically almost the rock stars of the shows. After lining them up, I couldn't have lined up a better series of shows if I had actually people telling me we're going to do these shows from the future going backwards. For that reason, I have Trey Taylor with me. We were the first half of the show went extremely fast. We were talking about being a home office and a family office business, instead of being your typical corporation or single-minded entity that's just running a business from day to day. Trey, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Magnus. Good to be with you. Enjoyed the first half conversation.
Oh, absolutely. And we dropped so many nuggets of information, so many golden nuggets of information there. If you miss it, definitely go back on a rebroadcast, or you can see it or listen to it on all the streaming services. And I actually just found out it's on Audible now. I was checking my reviews of the books and whatnot, and it's actually on Audible as well. If you have Audible and a subscriber, you can actually listen to it with your subscription and all your other paid subscriptions as well, which is ridiculous. But to get back to the show, we were talking about how 20 years ago, and even getting into life insurance and insurance policies, and being able to have assets to buy things. How When you first started your own hustles way back when you were a kid, how did you first realize that, hey, money has to make money? Money is not just going to come for me. It's not going to be given to me, and it's not going to actually earn money sitting in a bank, honestly.
It's weird that I have the exact answer for this, but I remember the first time that I realized that you could make money without working. My grandfather had taken my brother and I in the summer to the beach, and we were walking on the beach. We were going to get ready and go probably to an arcade and have food and that sort of thing, just fun times. And I think I was probably 8 years old, which means my brother was probably 5 years old. And my grandfather, he had one of those cell phones that looked like they were from Vietnam, like he was going to call in an airstrike, and he was on the phone, and I think he was talking to his office people or something, and he hung up the phone. He says, "Well, boys, I made $1,000 today." And I said immediately, "No, you didn't. You were with us all day." And he said, "Rich people don't work the way that you think people work. I made money and I was with you guys all day." And I remember thinking about that, like, almost obsessively after that, to say, wait a minute, I'm fundamentally lazy. I don't have to go to work, like you can do it up here. And I remember that was important. And then it was also my grandfather who had bought a car that he thought was interesting. Driving down the side of the road, it was a Volkswagen Carmagia that they
Oh
don't make
my.
anymore. And, a beautiful, like little quirky
Yeah.
looking car from the 60s or 70s. And he bought it on a Monday and sold it for like a $3,000 profit on a Friday. And all he did was have it cleaned for his
Okay.
own enjoyment. And it was parked in front of his office, and somebody came in and made him an offer on it. And I just remember those two events sort of saying to me, wait a minute, this is not like I think it is, that I have to go get a job and type it. For whatever reason, I thought typewriters were how people made money, like sit there and type all day long. That's how you made money. That's what I thought as a young kid. But those are the two events that sort of said that was very powerful to me. And then the third event, my dad bought our home our first home, because he bought Home Depot stock at the IPO offer of $10.
Oh
And he
my.
sold it for $20. He made $10,000, and he put that down on our first home. Now, had he held that stock, as I was always fond of reminding him, you and I wouldn't know each other, because I'd be vastly wealthy and I wouldn't be talking to anybody right now, But I remember that, say, oh, you use money to buy things, really big things. And, as a child, those things were sort of always in the background for me, thinking about stuff.
Okay. Now, with that mentality as you were growing up and the time you were going to school and whatnot, how much of an impact did the societal and structural formation of the schooling impact you on your decisions?
Unfortunately, way more than it should have.
Okay.
What I should have done is watch the way that my parents and grandparents acted, and not listen to them tell me how they thought I should act. Because, it's a very similar story around the country, that the first generation comes from nothing and builds something.
Right.
The second generation typically works within that framework. And the third generation typically loses it, is the meme that sort of goes around. But in reality, what happens is the second to third generation typically go on to become they go into a profession, law, medicine, engineering,
Mhm.
something of that nature. And that's very much what my family I don't want to say pushed. It was what I wanted as well, but they
Mhm.
sort of wanted that for me. And so, in going on that journey, what I wish they had said was, "Hey, you have a really good mind for math and business models and dissecting things and putting them back together again. You should, really focus yourself on entrepreneurialism and business." That's what they should have said to me. They didn't want me to be at the risk of not having a steady paycheck with health insurance and dental
Mhm.
and those kinds of things.
Okay.
And so that's how they encouraged me to do. I wish that I had known that there was a different way. I wish I had read Rich Dad Poor Dad at 8 years
Mhm.
of age instead of 38 or whatever it was.
Right.
I wish I had understood and trusted myself more to do deals and create wealth. I'm very much a proponent of that with my own kids. So this
Okay.
Christmas, both of my kids are getting LLCs for Christmas, and we will buy a house and fix and flip it together inside those LLCs. They will create wealth. They both have whole life policies that we bought when they were born.
Okay.
And they will use the money, the cash value of those policies to buy the homes. And we will do that in a very safe manner so that they can see that this is how you build wealth. It's one way that you build wealth.
Well, yeah, you're right. One way. And did you notice when you start getting into and seeing the the real aspects of being an entrepreneur and owning a business, that the fears that were cast upon you really weren't fears, just unknown items?
Yes, although I still tremble a bit before I make the leap,
Okay.
even today. So I think it's something that it's very much good proof that you can love somebody and tell them the wrong thing,
Mhm.
and what you tell them stays with them for a really long time.
Okay.
So I'm in the habit of people that work for me of telling them very often that there's nothing you can break that I can't fix. So let's take intelligent risks. Those risks should pay off more than they don't pay off. But they don't have to pay off every time. So I wish I had been gifted that in a little bit different way than I was.
I can attest with that, uh, because I have was talked out of many opportunities because of doing that. And looking back at those opportunities that I missed, uh, it's a very it's not really bitter, but it's more or less I won't put that decision making power into somebody else. I'll keep that myself, and then if it's on me, it's on me, and that's all. The only person that can change that is myself, not
Yeah,
anybody else to do that. Now,
yeah,
have
well
you
said.
and with that type of, thank you very much. Uh, but when you start now, you're bringing your children into this. They're going to be doing LLCs. They're going to be doing now. Will you allow them to make the mistakes that could allow them to make mistakes? I should say. We'll start with that.
Yeah, so when I taught my kids to ride a bike, I let them fall off the bike.
Okay.
I didn't kick the bike out from under them to see how they
Right.
would deal with it, right?
Mhm.
So, and I ran alongside the bike to make sure that they were balanced enough. And then I made the training wheels a little uneven so that they learned how to, zig and zag a little bit back and forth
Right.
until they became the ones to ride the bike. So that's the process that we're in now. At some point, will they fall victim to some idea of excess? Like, hey, Dad, I did one deal, I can do 50 next, which is often what happens. Then I'll be there as a cautionary voice to say, why don't we, let's walk, let's crawl, walk, and run
Mhm.
instead of trying to fly. So yeah, I think we'll do that, but I'll let them make mistakes, but not catastrophic mistakes.
Okay. Nothing nothing that would be harmful to their future, but a
Correct.
good learning experience in the short term.
Yes, exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's um I was given a little bit of that opportunity, but as we talked about, is I was actually I chose the professional path. Um Tired of the professional path, honestly. And that's where
Yeah.
it's good for a lot of people. Don't get me wrong. It's what they choose, it's what they like, it's what they're I hate to say it, comfortable with. I'm tired of
It
being
is. You're
comfortable.
exactly right. It's a comfortableness that comes with something that is small and limited that we can master without fear. And that's where the danger sets in. I spoke to a group in February of 160 dentists. Okay, that's as professional as you can get a room.
Right.
They all had advanced degrees. They all had college degrees. They all had dental school degrees. Some of them have even more education than that. And they were all wage slaves. To some extent, they were all dependent on what they did with their hands every single day. If they didn't show up, they didn't get paid.
Okay.
Tell me the difference, except in magnitude, of that and a guy that digs ditches or cleans pools for a living, right? Not that there's anything wrong with any of those professions, any of those activities, but the difference in wanting to be a professional should be that you have more wealth, more freedom, more ability to do the things that spark your heart rather than the things that you have to do to keep food on the table. And I was stunned in that group, which was a group oriented towards breaking free of that. I was stunned in that group how many of them were in that mindset.
Okay. Wow. That's what society wants us to do. So we keep performing, if you will, and
That's
doing our
right.
daily jobs, and instead of free thinkers, and uh, keeping an open mind and actually making money. Because if everybody knew these tips, tricks, and had the ambition to do that, people wouldn't be doing that type of work as well.
That's exactly right. And I'll tell you, the gateway drug for all of it is stuff, right? Yeah. And the quote that I love, it comes from the movie Fight, or the book Fight Club, and the movie Fight Club. The things we own end up owning us.
Yes.
And every time I want to make a big new purchase, I say to myself, am I gonna want that 6 months from now when I have to make a monthly payment on it as much as I want it right now? And I talk myself out of it more now than I used to, probably still not as much as I should. But just that acquisition of a long-term obligation for a short-term benefit is something that I really have to think through and justify.
Okay. Well, I do remember an old comedian way back. I'm talking probably late 80s, early 90s, that did his skit on stuff.
George Carlin.
George Carlin. Yeah, it was George
Yeah.
Carlin. You're right.
Yeah.
Why do we get a job? To buy stuff. We buy a house to buy stuff. We buy a bigger why do we buy a bigger house? To buy more stuff. Why do we buy a
Yeah.
car? To transport the stuff.
Yeah.
It's a never ending cycle.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a friend that always says, don't go broke to appear to broke people as if you're not broke. And I love it because he's right. I see so many people saying, well, I'm going to buy the latest and greatest, whatever it happens to be. And again, I'm not saying like, don't enjoy what you work for.
Right.
That's the point. But I'm saying be smart and intelligent about it.
Oh, absolutely. And I had a mastermind meeting with my other authors that I'm in with, that I did the course with and whatnot. And the lady that was asked a very good question. She's like, are your expectations on point for what you're getting right now of what you're doing? I'm like, and honestly, besides not talking about it, and after thinking about it all day, I answered it very bitterly, because I don't have the instant gratification of, I already put the work in and I'm seeing the money back from it. We're still in the hustle stage. So as I sat here and thought about it, even though it's a business, I'm going to turn this into a family business, or actually, as it starts growing, is I shouldn't have any expectations right now. I should see goals and see things that I want it to happen, because a year ago this was not possible. Last year was the first year I wrote the book and published it. Then the second book came. 6 months after that, the show came, and now I'm right here, right now, at the end of the year, with over 9,000 listens, with 7.5, close to 8 months worth of shows.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. It's I know you know the speaker Les Brown, but Les has a phrase where he says, "Your success is none of your business."
Exactly.
Stop focusing on the success. Do the work. The success follows. It's a byproduct. It can only be a byproduct. And I think the danger that I've noticed in the last 10 years has been with the rise of social media, you can look like a success without being a success. That's
Right.
dangerous. Yeah.
You're right. And the social media takes away from us. Well, especially with success. Your book, what the CEO does, 3 things a good CEO does, that is one of them that's actually listed in there of actually one of the things. There's the good CEOs that you have in your book that do a fantastic job, but are overworked, overextended, and not concentrating on the pillars that you wrote the book upon.
Right. Exactly right. Yeah.
So,
So the book is a CEO only does 3 things.
right.
And, I know that CEOs have to-do lists that are a lot longer than 3 items. I understand that.
Mhm.
But the point of the book is to say, if you're touching, if you are manufacturing, if you are just involved with every aspect of your business, we have been taught that that is a virtue. But what I will prove to you time and again is that your presence in all things in your business is a limiter on that business. And so the more you can focus on the 3 most important things that CEOs do because they're the only ones that can do it, which is work on the culture, work on the people, and work on the numbers. You're the only one that can do those 3 things, that has the authority and the responsibility for those 3 things. When you focus on those things and get them satisfied, then reserve your efforts for the things that need help throughout the rest of the business. That's when we start to see businesses really, really grow. And the book's message has been received far in excess of what my expectations ever were.
Absolutely. And reading some of your reviews on it, there's countless reviews on the book, and they're all positive. I have maybe there's what 1 or 2, like 1 or 2 star ones, but you can tell after reading them, they were looking at something just to get out there, that something happened to them. It wasn't about the book or what the
I
book
felt the
was.
same way, so I'm glad to hear you say that too.
Well,
I've got people that I really respect. Gary Keller from Keller Williams said,
Why?
this book is now on my desk with the top 5 books that I've ever read for my career. Gosh, that was so important. Grant Cardone read it and said, Trey's the smartest guy in the room. He knows something about business formation. Kevin Harrington, who they built the Shark Tank concept around, said, this book is what I wish I had the first day I started my business.
Right.
And, that's not testament to me. It's testament to the fact that we all sort of recognize that when you focus, you get better results.
Right. And when you limit the focus, you get even better results with less distractions in a better time frame.
Correct.
So, yeah, I definitely agree with the book, with what you're saying, and we all get in our own way about things. It's like, well, this book is saying this, but of course, our attitude, our macho-ness, or whatever you want to call it, thinks they can do better than it and try something off the beaten path. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, and then if it doesn't work, then we get bitter, we get frustrated, it goes down that giant slope really quick.
Yes,
But
it can do if we choose to let that be the way
exactly.
that we see it. Absolutely. We have a value in our business. We have 13 core values called the B attitudes. And number 8 is number 10 is to be intrepid, which means to take a risk.
Okay.
And to realize that a risk usually will end in some form of failure, unless we take a lesson and a learning from what that failure was, so that we fail forward at all times.
Absolutely. And then it's not really a failure, it's a learning experience.
Exactly. And any money that you spend to learn is called tuition, not a loss. Yeah.
You're right. You're right about that. And your book, it doesn't matter the size of the company. It could be like we were talking about, the small mom and pop shops, the small families, the medium families, all the way up to the corporate level folks are reading this, and it's been proven to work.
Yeah, again, I'm blown away by the success of the book. It's the most gifted book amongst Inc. 5000 CEOs. I did something called Secret Mastermind, where the organizer brings 50 CEOs and CFOs of Fortune 50 companies together, 50 and 100 companies together. And the first day of the event, they bring the speaker in who has written a book. Everyone shows up, has read the book. And the first question is this relevant? And they ask that right in front of the speaker. And I tell you, my knees were knocking because I've never run a Fortune 50 business, right? I don't know if that's of interest to them or not. And almost unanimously, the room said, yes, I would be a better CEO if I did these three things very intentionally every day. Not that I could sort of punch in at 8 o'clock, do those three things and leave at 8:30. That's not the point of the book, but to focus your efforts on those three things where only you can move the needle to the extent that it needs to be moved. That's the real message of the book. Yeah.
Wow. That's mind blowing. If we take it down, instead of looking all around to everybody, all of our friends, all of our peers and whatnot, we actually focus on what we're trying to get done. It would actually, you'd see so much more success. And I do see that as well. I have to put the blinders on every now and then, just to recalibrate.
Absolutely. Yep. And what I do is I work with CEO clients a lot in my consulting business to say, what are you touching that you shouldn't be? How much money did you make last year? Divide that by a normal work year number of hours, and anything that comes in below that number. So if you make $600 an hour, $100 an hour, whatever, why are you doing things that somebody who you pay $10 an hour could do? It doesn't make sense. So I have a client who chooses the break room coffee creamer flavors. Right? That's not something a CEO should be doing. And here's the other clue. He gets it wrong. He orders the stuff that he likes, not that everybody likes.
Yeah.
But a $10 an hour employee or somebody who's more, suited to that would choose something that everybody likes. So it's amazing to me how often we sort of get it wrong when we do those kinds of activities.
Yes, especially wow, we got to wrap this up. We're going to wind down a little bit. I'll have this one quick story is there was a company that I used to work for. There was an East and West Coast office, completely polar opposites on how they ran the business. West Coast office got everything. They got their cars washed. They got masseuses coming in. They had candy. They had all this food. They had everything. The East Coast office where I was at, nothing. We were lucky if we had a holiday dinner. And they were wondering why there was so much less productivity between both of them. And you're right. It's stay out of it. Let the people that know the people make those choices.
Make those choices. That's right. Exactly. That's the benefit of focus. Absolutely.
Trey, I I hate to say it, but we're out of time.
It was fast, Magnus. It goes fast.
It did go fast, but it was quality. There was a lot of quality here. A lot of your book, your experience, you in general, of all taking the time out of your day to help the listeners out there that want to be better, that actually want to succeed further and get the tools and tips they need to do this. Speaking of that, where can they find you in case they have any questions, or if they your book especially?
Yeah, the book's on Amazon. A CEO Only Does Three Things. The book has a website, a CEO Only Does Three Things.com. My personal website is trey-taylor.com. I do a newsletter that you can sign up for at plantyourflag.live. And my Twitter handle is Trey Taylor CEO.
Awesome. I appreciate your time and thank you for being on the show, Trey.
Thanks, Magnus. Good to see you.
Good seeing you as well. Next week, everybody, just a little taste of what we're doing next week is it's the last show of the year of 2022 already. I cannot believe this. And I have a very special guest that I've got to know, the privilege of knowing over the last couple of weeks, is I have Justine Pogroski from $1 Million Branders to be on the show. And we're going to talk about taking your brand that we learned about, or personal brand, or the brand you have now, and we're going to take it to the next level and get some information and some wisdom on how to actually grow that into being an empire and putting the work in to do so. I couldn't think of a better way for this year to end with my guest this month. Trey, thank you for tuning. Thank you for being on the show with me and your time. And everybody, enjoy the holidays. Be safe out there. And we'll see you next Tuesday.
All clear. Great job today, gentlemen.
Thank you,
good deal.
Andrew.
Happy holidays to both of you and take care. We'll see you next time.
Oh,
You too.
absolutely.
Thanks.
You as well.
Thank you.
Trey, what did you think about the show?
Yeah, good, man. Really good.
Awesome. Is there anything that we didn't touch that you would like to go over? It's still recording. It'll be on the YouTube channel.
No.
Okay.
No, I think you got it. I mean, there's always depth that you can go into, but no, I think you got it. And I think hopefully those little stories are interesting. You know, I know that not everybody sort of grows up privileged in a way that that we were blessed to grow up,
You're right.
but hopefully, you know, knowing that even people that grow up privileged can still have those learnings and still want growth over what they received by birth. Maybe that's helpful to somebody. I hope it is.
Absolutely. And I appreciate saying that, because all the guests that I've been finding for the show that have been reaching out, and I've been actually reaching out to, every story is different, but they all had the same core things they did to get where they're at. And that's one of the best things I can actually show time and time again. It's not where you're from. It's not how you've grown up. It's not those items. It's the person that chooses to make it happen.
It's true, man. It's the hustle for sure.
Absolutely. And
I agree.
I'm happy you're a part of it. I'm gonna actually close this out.